Have you ever looked at someone you thought you understood, completely, innocently, and realized, in one sudden, breathless moment, that you didn't know them at all? He used to tutor my daughter in math. Twice a week, without fail, he'd show up right on time, textbooks in hand, a polite smile on his face. Quiet, respectful, kind. The sort of man you don't notice until one day you do. And once you see him differently, you can't unsee it. It happened on a Tuesday, of all days. Emma, my daughter, had a headache and asked to skip tutoring. I agreed. She went to her room. He arrived as usual, but when I explained she wouldn't be studying that evening, he didn't leave. Instead, he looked at me, tilted his head slightly, and said something I still haven't forgotten. "Well then, maybe tonight you can teach me something." I laughed, unsure of what he meant. But he didn't smile. That's when the room changed. The air grew dense. I was no longer just a mother standing in her living room. I was a woman, standing on the edge of something dangerous and impossibly tempting. He used to tutor my daughter. That evening, he stopped. And in the hours that followed, he taught me far more than numbers. He taught me where loneliness ends, and desire begins. My name is Sarah. I'm 39, a freelance editor, a mother, and for the most part, a woman who's learned to live with quiet. Not silence, exactly. My days are filled with sounds, Emma's footsteps thudding across the upstairs hallway, the microwave beeping as it reheats leftovers, the soft murmur of audiobooks I edit for a living, but it's a quiet sort of life. Predictable. Structured. Safe. Emma is 13 going on 30. She has a fire in her that I both envy and fear. Artistic, headstrong, and far too perceptive for her age. Her father and I split when she was 7. He remarried within a year and moved to the West Coast. Calls became monthly, then quarterly, and eventually, she stopped asking when he'd visit next. I tried to fill the gap. With love, mostly. But also with routines, after-school snacks, homework supervision, movie nights on Fridays, and a list of chores stuck to the fridge with an avocado-shaped magnet. And when she began struggling with math last year, pre-algebra and geometry turning into blank stares and frustrated tears, I found her a tutor. A gentle, quiet man named Daniel. Daniel was referred by a friend. I remember our first meeting vividly. He arrived early, wearing a soft grey sweater and carrying a leather satchel. His voice was calm and composed, the kind of voice that made you want to believe in it. He spoke to Emma like she was an equal, not a problem to solve. He was patient, warm without being overly familiar. She responded to him almost immediately. He was here every Tuesday and Thursday at 5. I'd offer him coffee, he always accepted, black with 1 sugar. They'd sit at the dining table, Emma's pencil tapping as she worked through fractions and formulas, Daniel guiding her with gentle nudges. I'd listen from the kitchen or the stairwell, always nearby but never hovering. At first, I barely noticed him. He was just Daniel. A helpful presence. It wasn't until month 4 that I found myself lingering longer during their sessions. I'd pause at the doorway with a tea mug in hand, pretending to tidy up or check the thermostat. Watching him explain linear equations, leaning in slightly, nodding in approval when Emma solved something correctly. And occasionally, he'd glance up and catch me watching. He never said anything about it, but I always felt it. A flicker of something unspoken. It was ridiculous, I told myself. He was younger than me, mid-30s, maybe, but he carried himself with an old-world composure that made him seem older. And besides, he was here for Emma. I was her mother, not a character in some torrid novel. Still, I'd think about him sometimes. When I was in bed late at night, scrolling through emails. When I passed by the table where he and Emma used to sit, and found a forgotten equation written in his tidy, looping handwriting. When I smelled black coffee and instinctively reached for the sugar. I'd been single for 4 years. There had been dates. Apps. Men who asked what my co-parenting arrangement was before they even knew my favorite movie. One tried to sell me a crypto investment idea before the drinks even arrived. I stopped trying after a while. My heart had settled into hibernation, tired of hoping, tired of being disappointed. And yet, there was something about Daniel that pulled at me. Not just the way he looked, though, objectively, he was attractive, but the way he listened. The way he spoke with Emma like her ideas mattered. The way he'd occasionally laugh at my bad kitchen jokes or compliment my choice of books when he saw one lying face down on the couch. I'd find myself wondering, what did he do when he wasn't tutoring? Did he have a partner? A secret hobby? Did he notice the way I tucked my hair behind my ear when I was nervous, or how I always had exactly 2 cups of tea before bed? I never asked. He never told. And maybe that's why what happened that night shook me so deeply. Because nothing about Daniel had ever felt inappropriate. There was no lingering touch, no flirtatious comments, no lines crossed. He was respectful, polite, and focused. That was what made it so easy to let him in. Until that Tuesday. Emma had stayed home sick with a sore throat. She was curled up on the couch in her oversized hoodie, a watercolor set balanced on her lap. When Daniel arrived, I answered the door, apologizing for the last-minute cancellation. I offered to still pay him for the hour, but he waved it off with a small smile. "No need," he said. "But, do you mind if I stay a bit? I brought something for Emma." It was a sketch pad. Not a math book. He'd remembered her love of art, had picked up something just for her. She beamed when she saw it, thanked him, and returned to her painting. Daniel lingered in the doorway for a moment, then turned to me. "I don't want to intrude," he said. "But if you've got a few minutes, would you like to sit? I've always wondered how you see things." It caught me off guard. I blinked. "Me?" He smiled again, but there was something else behind it this time. A softness. A question. "Yes," he said. "You. Just you." And just like that, the dynamic shifted. He wasn't Emma's tutor anymore. At least, not just that. And I was no longer just the quiet mother in the next room. It was the beginning of something. I just didn't know yet how far it would go, or how much it would cost. I don't know why I invited him to stay that night. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the look in his eyes, somewhere between admiration and restraint, that made me feel like more than Emma's mom for the first time in years. We sat across from each other at the dining table, the same one where he usually tutored Emma. The sketch pad he'd brought sat between us, unopened. From the living room, the faint sound of watercolor brushes tapping gently against a glass jar gave the moment a strange kind of intimacy, like we were in a bubble that the world had forgotten to pop. Daniel leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table. "You're always here in the background," he said softly. "Helping, holding everything together. But no one really asks about you, do they?" I blinked, caught off guard by the tenderness in his voice. "I'm fine," I replied, the automatic phrase leaving my lips before I even thought about it. "Are you?" he asked. He wasn't challenging me. It wasn't a push. It was an opening. I looked down at my tea, now lukewarm. "Most days," I said, more truthfully. "It's not easy, but Emma's my world. And I guess I've learned to make peace with the rest." He nodded slowly. "You don't have to pretend with me." I felt that. Deep in my chest. The way he said it, calm, certain, it unmoored something inside me. Over the next 20 minutes, the conversation drifted from Emma's artwork to his childhood in Yorkshire, to the way both of us had grown up with parents who didn't know how to say "I'm proud of you" unless it came wrapped in criticism. He shared more than I expected, about leaving academia because it felt too sterile, about tutoring because it kept him connected to something real, something human. Then, he asked, "Do you ever miss the version of yourself before all this?" That question. That damn question. I froze. A breath caught in my throat. He didn't fill the silence. He waited. Gently. "I used to feel electric," I admitted after a moment. "Before Emma. Before the divorce. Before I started measuring my self-worth by whether the laundry was folded or if we had peanut butter in the cupboard." He looked at me like I was speaking poetry. "You still are," he said. "Electric." I stared at him. My pulse quickened. My heart beat loud in my ears. My instinct screamed, "Danger." But I didn't move. His hand brushed mine. Barely a touch, just a feather-light skim of his fingers. I should have pulled away. Instead, I turned my hand, letting my fingers wrap around his. And that's when the doorbell rang. We both jumped. Emma looked up from the couch. I shot out of my chair, flustered, brushing hair behind my ears. It was Rachel, my best friend since college and Emma's honorary aunt. She lived 3 blocks away and had a knack for showing up when I least expected her, usually bearing wine and unsolicited advice. "Surprise," she said, holding up a bottle of Malbec and squinting past me into the hallway. "Am I interrupting something?" I shook my head, forcing a laugh. "No, just Emma's tutor. He was dropping something off." Daniel stepped into view. Rachel's eyes narrowed just slightly. She offered a polite smile, the kind that says I'm clocking everything. Well, she murmured under her breath as I took her coat. Daniel gave us both a polite nod and said he had to be going. No rush. No drama. Just a knowing glance between us that made my skin tingle long after the door closed behind him. Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Care to explain?" I busied myself pouring wine. "There's nothing to explain." She smirked. "He's hot. And unless I'm misreading things, which I never do, he's into you." I sighed. "He tutors Emma." She tilted her head. "And he's also a grown man who clearly sees something in you. Sarah, you've been in survival mode for years. You deserve to feel something again." I wanted to argue, to dismiss it all as a misinterpretation. But the truth sat heavily in my chest. I did feel something. And it terrified me. The next session, Daniel arrived on time. Emma greeted him with her usual half-shy smile, but I could tell she was more distracted than usual. She kept glancing between us when I offered him coffee, as if sensing something had changed. Kids always know. After their session, he lingered again, under the pretense of asking about Emma's progress. I offered a few thoughts, trying to stay neutral, but my voice cracked when he asked if I was okay. "I'm trying not to feel like a terrible mother," I admitted. "Even thinking about this, whatever this is, feels like I'm betraying Emma." "You're not," he said gently. "You're human. And you're allowed to want something for yourself." I shook my head. "She trusts you. She adores you." "And I adore her," he replied, without hesitation. "But that doesn't mean I can't also care about you." My breath caught. I realized I was standing too close. I stepped back, but he didn't move. Instead, he looked at me like he was memorizing the way my face changed in the light. "I'm not trying to complicate your life," he said softly. "But I won't lie and pretend I don't see you. Not the mom. You." He left soon after, but the word stayed. Echoed. The real complication came a week later, when Emma came home with a scraped knee and a crumpled note from school. I cleaned her up, kissed her forehead, and put on a movie to cheer her up. Halfway through, she turned to me and asked, "Do you like Mr. Daniel?" I choked on my tea. "What?" "I mean, you smile different when he's around." I froze. "Sweetheart, he's your tutor. He helps you with math." She looked unconvinced. "But do you like him?" I didn't know what to say. Lying felt wrong. Telling the truth felt dangerous. "I think he's kind," I said slowly. "And smart. And good to you." She stared at me, then looked away. "Okay." That single word echoed for hours after she went to bed. A few days later, I saw Daniel again. We met at a coffee shop far from home, away from prying eyes and curious daughters. I told him about the conversation with Emma. His face softened with concern. "I don't want to come between you two," he said. "I don't want to be the reason she questions anything." "I don't think she'd ever hate you," I said. "But I'm afraid she'll hate me." He reached across the table, his thumb grazing the back of my hand. "She won't," he said. "Not forever. But maybe for a little while." I whispered. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both knew the answer. In that quiet cafe, with the rain streaking down the windows and the weight of impossible decisions pressing between us, I realized something. This wasn't just about a crush or even about desire. This was about who I was willing to hurt, in order to feel alive again. And I didn't know if I was brave enough to make that choice. Or if I already had. It was a Friday when it all unraveled. The week had passed in a haze. I had been quieter, more distant, even with Emma. I was afraid of the moment I knew was coming, like standing on a dock watching a wave approach in slow motion. You tell yourself you can brace for it, stand your ground. But when it hits, it's never the way you imagined. Emma was sitting at the kitchen counter, head bent over a math worksheet, her pencil tapping a slow rhythm. I was behind her, chopping vegetables for dinner, the rhythmic slice of the knife the only sound in the room. The tension was thick. She hadn't brought up Daniel in days. I hadn't either. Then, her voice cut through the silence like a knife. Small, calm, deadly. Are you in love with him? The knife paused mid-slice. I turned to look at her, my heart stopping mid-beat. What? I asked, trying to sound composed. Daniel, she said. She looked up at me, her expression unreadable. Are you in love with him? I opened my mouth. Closed it. My fingers tightened around the knife handle. Emma, why would you? Because he looks at you like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life, she said. And you look at him like you want to believe it's true. I leaned against the counter, suddenly dizzy. My throat was dry. She wasn't accusing me. She wasn't even angry. Not yet. That made it worse. I didn't mean for it to happen, I said finally. It just did. She nodded slowly. So it's true. I felt like a balloon someone had let go of. The room felt airless. We never meant to hurt you, I said. He respects you. God, Emma, I never wanted this to touch you. I wanted to keep it separate. You wanted to keep it a secret, she said. Her voice was still quiet, but the edge had sharpened. Because I was afraid, I whispered. Afraid of losing you. She pushed the worksheet aside. And now? I walked around the counter, sat across from her. My hands trembled. Now I don't know, I admitted. I've made so many decisions in my life out of fear. Staying silent, staying safe. But this time, I felt something real. Something I hadn't felt in years. She stared at me for a long time. Her eyes looked so much older than 13. When did it start? I don't know exactly, I said. Nothing happened while you were around. Nothing happened until you asked to skip tutoring that night. We just talked. And I felt seen. Emma's jaw tensed. She blinked hard. You're supposed to be my safe place, she said, and this time her voice cracked. I still am, I said. But I'm also human. I'm a woman who's been alone for a long time. I trusted him, she whispered. I told him things I never told Dad. I nodded. So did I. Her chair scraped back as she stood. I need some air. She didn't slam the door, didn't yell. But her absence in the house rang louder than any outburst could. I stood there for a long time, unmoving. The knife still lay on the cutting board, a half-chopped carrot forgotten beside it. Outside, the sun was setting in streaks of pink and amber, soft light pooling across the kitchen tiles like spilled memories. I sent Daniel a text. She knows. He responded immediately. Do you want me to come? I hesitated. Then typed. Not yet. Let me try to fix this first. That night, Emma didn't come home. My panic rose in waves. I called her friends. Checked the park. Walked up and down the street, heart hammering with each step. She returned just after midnight. I found her curled up on the porch swing, arms wrapped around herself. I didn't go far, she said before I could speak. Just needed to think. I sat beside her, the wooden swing creaking beneath us. I'm sorry, I said. I know those words aren't enough, but they're all I have. She didn't look at me, just stared into the night. I thought you'd always just be mine, she said finally. Even after Dad left. Even when I was awful. I thought I didn't have to share you. Tears burned behind my eyes. You don't have to share me, I said. Not really. Loving someone doesn't mean loving you any less. She wiped at her cheek with the sleeve of her hoodie. He said he'd stop coming if I asked him to. My breath caught. He told me he'd leave if I needed him to. Because you and I mattered more than whatever this thing was between you two. I nodded slowly. He meant it. She turned toward me for the first time that night. Her eyes were red. I don't know if I'm okay with it, she said. I'm still mad. I probably will be for a while. I understand, I said. But I think I can be mad and still not want to lose you. Or him. I exhaled a shaky breath. We'll take it slow. Nothing has to change overnight. She leaned her head against my shoulder. It was the smallest gesture, but it cracked me open. Don't lie to me again, she whispered. Not even to protect me. I won't, I promised. We sat in silence, the swing moving gently back and forth beneath us. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. A car engine rumbled to life. I still don't like the idea of you kissing him, she muttered after a long pause. I laughed through my tears. I don't like the idea of you growing up and falling for someone either. But I guess we don't get to protect each other from everything, do we? She was quiet. Then, with a sigh, she said, can we just eat pancakes in the morning and pretend we're fine for a little while? Absolutely, I whispered. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. And that was more than I had hoped for. In the weeks that followed, everything slowed down. Daniel didn't come over. Not at first. We agreed, silently, mutually, that space was necessary. Emma and I needed to find each other again. And I needed to prove, not through grand gestures but through the steady, invisible weight of every ordinary day, that she came first. We returned to our routines, but they felt different now. Softer. We had more dinners at the table. I started sitting on her bed at night again, listening to her half-formed thoughts about school, her new obsession with an old band she'd found online, the way she liked to sketch in the margins of her math notes now. She didn't mention Daniel, and I didn't either. But some nights, I'd find her flipping through that sketchpad he gave her, the one with the thick ivory pages and tiny, thoughtful notes scribbled in the corners. One page simply read, "For Emma. Make messes. Art loves messes." She never said anything about it, but I noticed she started using ink again. That used to scare her, the permanence of it. And that was something, wasn't it? As for me, I felt like I'd stepped off a cliff and landed on solid ground that was still a little shaky beneath my feet. I was confronting truths I hadn't had the courage to before, that I was lonely. That I was allowed to want more. That being a good mother didn't mean being a martyr. And that love, in all its complicated forms, sometimes asks us to hold two truths in our hands at once. Daniel waited. He never pushed. He sent a message once a week, simple things like thinking of you, or tell Emma I saw a watercolor exhibition she would have loved. He was quiet in the way only someone who truly respected your space could be. One Sunday morning, 2 months after the night everything came to light, Emma and I were cleaning out the hall closet. Shoes scattered the floor, winter coats we hadn't worn in years clung to old hangers, and I was sitting cross-legged on the floor with a pile of gloves when she suddenly said, "I think he should come to dinner." I looked up, stunned. "Daniel." She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. "Just dinner. Just to see." I wanted to reach across the room and hold her face in my hands, to cry and laugh and ask if she was sure, but I didn't. I nodded. "Okay," I said softly. "Just dinner." That Thursday, he came. He brought flowers for me, pale tulips, my favorite, and a second sketchpad for Emma, along with a tiny, hand-carved pencil sharpener shaped like a rabbit. She took it with a quiet smile and a simple thanks, but I saw the way she cradled it later, the way she placed it next to her paints as though it was something sacred. Dinner was awkward. Then warm. Then surprisingly ordinary. Emma even rolled her eyes when Daniel made a dry joke about the Pythagorean theorem, and I watched as her smile grew despite herself. After dessert, she disappeared into her room, and Daniel helped me clear the table. "She's stronger than either of us," he said, drying a plate. I nodded. "She always has been." He looked at me then, eyes soft. "Are we okay?" I didn't answer with words. I stepped closer, placed my hand on his chest, listened to his heartbeat, steady and sure. Maybe we weren't okay. Not completely. Not yet. But we were on our way. There's no perfect ending to a story like this. There are still moments when guilt creeps up unexpectedly, when I remember the look in Emma's eyes that night in the kitchen, or the ache of wanting something that could have broken her. But those moments pass. And in their place, new ones grow. Emma still asks questions sometimes, not about us, exactly, but about the nature of love, of trust, of what it means to be someone's home. They're big questions, and I don't always have the right answers. But we talk about them. And that, I've learned, is what matters. Daniel is still in our lives. Slowly, thoughtfully. He and Emma are rebuilding something different from before, but maybe more honest. And as for me, I'm learning to live out loud again. To let myself be more than a caretaker. To be vulnerable, even when it's terrifying. I've come to believe that love isn't always about fairy tale endings or flawless choices. Sometimes, it's about forgiveness. About taking a risk. About standing in the uncomfortable truth and deciding to love anyway. And maybe that's what this story really is. Not one of betrayal or scandal, but of growth. Of a woman who forgot what it felt like to be seen, and a daughter who was brave enough to hold that truth in her hands, even when it hurt. We're still writing this story, Emma and I, page by page. Some messy, some tender, but all of it real. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.